You are now tuned into Check This Out News. We connect the streets. Here at Check This Out, you know how we like to do it, covering tech, music, and pop culture. We disrupt and connect the streets, and I say disrupt as this week we got a true maverick in the building. Vincent Bragg, the CEO of ConCreates. If you haven't heard of ConCreates, let me give you a little background. With more than 119 men and women behind bars and 54 who have returned home, they are the largest creative force ever assembled in this space. These cons are creators who have nothing but time on their hands to develop some of the most innovative and out-of-the-box ideas for marketing, branding, and PR campaigns the world has ever seen. Here we have Vincent Bragg now. What up?
Man, everything good, man. How y'all doing?
Awesome, man. Now, I know you started off in the dope game, and you got a very deep story. So tell our listeners a little bit about your background.
You know, I kind of started off like, in the weed gang.
Smoke weed every day.
Or whatever before, it was legal, I guess you could say. And I ended up graduating to cocaine. And, basically I was like a high-priced middleman. I got worked for really, really cheap and sold it for really, really high and made a lot of money and, ended up catching a federal case.
Interesting. So how were you able to turn something that could have seemingly been a negative that took you out the game into something so positive?
I think it's just circumstance. I think especially like in the entrepreneurship space, like I always like to use this as an example, right? Like, when we were growing up, we were taught two things. Don't get in the car with strangers and don't meet people online. And now we do this every single day with things like Lyft and Uber, right? We jump in cars with strangers that we've met on an app online, right? So it was kind of like circumstance. Like I recognized the problem, which was, we were creating strategies for companies and making these companies millions of dollars and getting paid pennies on the dollar. So I thought, let's leverage this creative mind power and do this for other brands. And so I built a network inside a prison with creative minds. And I think when you guys got those numbers have drastically changed. So 119 is now 188. That 54 is now 96 on the outside who participate as well.
What was life like for you in the feds versus, say, state prison?
Well, I couldn't tell you like the difference between state. I've never been to state prison. My first and only case was federal. So I think, just from knowing people in the state that, for one, people have a misconception. They think Martha Stewart, when they think about federal prison. And when you think about federal prison, a lot of guys are doing a lot of time. So they don't, it is a violent place, you know what I mean? But I think the difference between state and feds also is this is like the top of the top, right? Just the cream of the crop when it comes to IQ levels and sophistication and things like that. So you get a chance to really operate with guys that are operating on all cylinders,
Understood. Where were you locked up?
I caught my case in Ohio. So I started out in Ohio. I went to Lompoc USP, which at the time was a medium, a FCI. I went to Lompoc Low, and then I left Terminal Island, which is all in California.
So what was one of the biggest lessons you learned while you were incarcerated?
Oh, man, there's so many. I mean, I think the most profound was just self-awareness, right? Like, I think, I had the opportunity, like when I was out there in the streets and getting all this money, I more or less reacted to life rather than plan for it. And being in prison, it gave me an opportunity to really think about what I really wanted out of life and, think about my relationship with mankind and what I was doing to people. Even though I'm so far removed, I didn't think I was harming anybody, to really think about, mothers and single fathers and how many other people probably went to jail because they had my products and, things like that. Just, I think, the biggest lesson was just, paying attention to my relationship with mankind.
So clearly we have a lot of people from Wall Street, such as Bernie Madoff, politicians like Jesse Jackson Jr., among many other politicians who have all been locked up. And prison has a vast talent pool of people with various skill sets. So what is ConCreate doing to utilize this pool?
Well, I think that's a really, really great question, because I don't think my mission is to change people, right? I think the perspective. So I founded this company with a guy who successfully robbed 27 banks, right?
Damn, son.
And I approached him and I said, you know what? I know you ain't bank robbery. I know they told you that you were a bank robber, but you are a strategist, right? Like, you're methodical. You pay attention to details, and you're charismatic, because you got to convince people that we're going to get away with robbing 27 banks, right?
True.
So how do we repurpose that skill set into something more powerful when there's companies out there that will pay you a handsome ransom for that title, strategist, right? So I look for people who operated on this particular level with these different skill sets, and I repurpose those skill sets into marketing, branding, PR, design work, just all of the things that come along with the creative space. I just repurpose their talent into a positive shape or form.
Okay.
Transform their hustle.
Understood. Now, do you have competitors in this space?
I am the only one. I mean, there's other people in the prison space. I mean, great organizations like Defy Ventures, which is a prisoner entrepreneurship program post-release and for the incarcerated, where they teach you entrepreneurship skills, in order to actually successfully launch a business. So I actually got out of prison and jumped in that program, and that's how the structure of ConCreates and everything started to be built and shaped and formed.
What is it that you've done that has allowed your brand to stand out the way it does?
Well, for one, I think it's the business model, right? Like, everybody talks about business models like Tom's, right? Like, you buy a pair of shoes and then somebody gets, a pair of shoes who don't have it in a different country or a third world country or, whatever that deal is. And I think right now in the time that we live in, I think the world is so much more conscious about what they put in their bodies, right? The media they consume, the environment, right? There's just a higher level of consciousness. And from a human level, I think it's important for people to realize that we have 70+ million people walking around this country with criminal histories who can't find jobs and who are forgotten about. We have a lost or forgotten workforce in this population, and I think that's what makes me stand out.
Okay, so who are some of the clients that ConCreate is working with today?
So we're working with brands like Tie-Dye Leggings, Rich Sex, which is one of my guys who I did some time with. They know him as Mr. Rick or Hard Money Lender, or now he goes by Smart Money Rick. You could probably find him on Instagram, any social media out there. So brands like Rich Sex, I love startups, right? So BMF, obviously, we're working with that clothing line. My guy, Chili Chill, he owns the trademark to the apparel side of BMF, and we're working to kind of rebrand that particular image. I mean, you name it. Vexen Motors, which is the first ever carbon negative vehicle, meaning to manufacture this car and to drive it leaves no carbon footprint, plant-based car.
Wow, so it is true that you are working with the infamous Black Mafia family and rebranding certain aspects of their business. What's that been like?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the apparel side, so let's be clear about that. Like, Big Meech owns the entertainment aspect of the BMF brand, and then my guy owns the apparel side. So we're working on the apparel aspect of it with the rebrand of that image. I know they're doing some other stuff in entertainment outside of my scope of work, but yeah, definitely working with the BMF clothing brand.
Very interesting. Now, in some ways, you're the face of the struggle for those who've been incarcerated, yet you also know some very key players within the tech and financial world, including the likes of Sheryl Sandberg, COO of Facebook. So how did that come about?
I met, Sheryl Sandberg. I met people like Gary Winnick, who's like the guy who laid the fiber optic cables on the ocean floor that connected the internet to the world. You know what I mean? So, I'm out here making noise, and I think it's important for me and other individuals too to like get in here and really talk. I don't know if I could curse on here, but just talk that. You know what I'm saying? It's people who, have the opportunity or the access to the capital or the access to these resources, and then they close the door on individuals like myself or individuals still, trying to get out the hood or trying to get out, but they still have great ideas and they still have ambition. And I think we need to level the playing field. So, yeah, I definitely move around in the tech space and deal with guys like Anthony Kaylani, who's a real one. You know what I'm saying? He's, he runs Microsoft Ventures in LA, and he's, one of those guys who's like leaving that door open for men like myself and women like my co-founder, Janaea Griffin. I mean, my team is amazing, bro. My team is amazing.
How'd you pull your team together?
Oh, man, I'm just not afraid. I feel like that, when before I went to prison, I was really insecure as a human being, and I really used money as a way to get what I wanted. And once I was able to plan out what I wanted, I talk to people and I tell my story, and people are inspired by it. And people like Janaea, who's both of her parents were incarcerated, and at a young age she was forced to have to take care of her little brother and make sure he get to school and he eat, and had to pay bills and that type of stuff. And even though it wasn't like a long period of time for her, that's a lot for a child, you know what I'm saying, to have to go through. And then witnessing her parents, not be able to get a job and things like that. This thing really resonates, especially when you think about how many people are actually affected by this mass incarceration rate. It's only a matter of time before people start to realize this is a problem.
We want to remind you to please like our Facebook page if you haven't already. When you join, you'll be able to receive weekly updated news and events, live video messages, and most importantly, you'll be able to interact with tons of people just like you. So go on that button on top of your Facebook page and give it a click, or interact with us on Instagram. Without each and every one of you, Tech This Out would not exist. We couldn't do it without you. Make sure to repost and share different things you see on our page. The more you share, the better. Be sure to watch previous shows on our YouTube channel, and please subscribe so that you can be notified when we post new content. We really want to connect and hear from you, so please don't hesitate to message us.
So with Sheryl Sandberg, that's very strong. What was it about you? What did she recognize in you about your purpose in doing this?
Well, I think when I sat down to talk to her, it was through this organization I told you, Defy Ventures. So we went on this whole Silicon Valley tour. I mean, I met Jeff Weiner, the CEO of LinkedIn. I sat down with Damian Hooper Campbell from eBay, Diversity, and, went to a bunch of different brands, Google X and Google.org. And I think when it's all said and done, she is about second chances, right? And that's what it's about, right? How do we sit down and really have a dialogue? Because we've all done something, right?
Yes.
Like, to be known for the worst thing you ever did is a tragedy, right? You know what I'm saying? It's really a tragedy because people do evolve and people's perspective changes. Say it again. People do evolve and people's perspective changes. I'm not the same person I was back then. So I think from a human standpoint, we have that understanding of people deserve second chances.
So getting to know some of these incredible people, what are your thoughts on what Facebook is currently experiencing right now?
I mean, I think it's unfortunate, like, Sheryl caught up in it, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But when it's all said and done, like, they always say knowledge is power, right? And to a certain degree, I believe it is, right?
Major killer.
But I really believe firmly that the application of knowledge is where the power lies.
Talk to him.
So the way they were, maybe the way that they applied the knowledge that they had, it's about the way you use it. Did they use it for good or did they use it for evil? And I think that's what everybody's trying to get to the bottom of. And you know, that's really all I can say. I'm really not a judgmental person. Like, I think people do what they feel that their best option is at that moment in time. And sometimes it might not be a popular decision. So
I get it. Now, who are some of the big names within the venture capital world, tech, and corporate sector that stand out?
Oh man, I mean, there's so many guys and women. Like, there's so many women out here, you know, and doing so much good work. I can't really just pinpoint, you know what I'm saying? I really love, like, Jay-Z right now, right? Like, I'm loving his venture capital firm. I'm loving the fact that, you know, criminal justice reform speaks to him and resonates with him. I mean, honestly, if I was to take on a venture capital firm or look for VC money, I would love to, you know, start with him. But then you got other people like, you know, Microsoft Ventures, like they're doing some amazing things in the tech space. And oh man, it's just so many individuals. John Legend, who's making so much noise in the criminal justice reform space. You know, it's a beautiful thing. It's just, now let's just try to figure out how we can all come together, you know, as one fist rather than just a bunch of fingers slapping and poking at the same problem.
I heard you were at South by Southwest, so what was that like for you?
Oh my God, South by Southwest was amazing. I mean, we ended up meeting so many different people, just doing so many amazing things. And, you know, Encompass, that company is just really, really dope. And, you know, you got Kairos, my man, Brian Bracken out of Miami, you know what I mean? And this is a black man. He got the largest cryptocurrency commitment in the history of the Bitcoin, you know, and I mean, this guy's an animal. He raised $30 million in 10 days. You know what I mean? Like, it was just amazing, man. So many great relationships were forged out of South by Southwest.
Very solid.
Definitely, if you haven't been down there, you should definitely check it out.
I definitely have been. What was the climate like this year with the package bombings that took place?
Oh, I mean, like, I know T.I. did a performance, and that place, you know, had got like a bomb threat during that time. Tip still performed and rocked the house. I know Guru came out, really showed out. Like, it was just amazing. My son, the general, came down. It was just like, it was lit, bro. I don't think, you know, one monkey don't stop no show, right?
Absolutely. Now, how were you able to challenge attendees with your mission?
Well, I think the best way to describe it is I really just insert myself into the dialogue. I think people use diversity and inclusion, and these are like buzzwords that everybody's using. But so I would just, like, when they open the floor for questions, I would always ask a question by saying, hi, my name is Vincent Bragg. I'm the founder and CEO of ConCreates.com. My question, well, basically I would tell her what ConCreates is, right? We're a creative agency that crowdsources ideas and strategies from a network of incarcerated men and women. My question is, you guys are talking about diversity and inclusion when there's 70 plus million people walking around with criminal histories. What are you doing to include this particular population in on these talks? And most people were like,
next question, please.
I didn't realize that this population was so big. You know, let's see if we can help in some way. So I think the way I was able to engage was to at least put it in people's heads and, you know, exchange information and start to create that dialogue into how we can go about solving this problem.
So is it true you are on parole right now?
Yes, absolutely.
So how difficult is that, juggling a business and having to report in with your officer?
Well, in the federal system, it's just probation. So probation, honestly, is super, super cool about what I'm doing, right? Like it's almost like a rehabilitation case study, if you will. So they allow me to travel. They allow me to take these meetings and move around. You know, it's kind of restricting sometimes because they want notice in advance, and we've kind of been talking about that lately about, you know, since my business is really starting to take off and scale, how am I able to you know, some meetings, like if Mark Zuckerberg is like, hey, I need you up here in the morning, I'm getting on a plane tonight. You know what I'm saying? So it's just something we need to dialogue and really create a plan of action. So, this is not such a problem.
So is it safe to say that law enforcement has been supportive of ConCreate?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, obviously, I think the bigger it gets, the more problem it might be for them because, it's big business. If people stop committing crimes and look at all of the people who are going to be out of jobs. So, you know what I mean? And so, I'm prepared for that.
So tell me this, what is your message to the corporate world? What would you like to see them do that they're not doing enough of?
Let us sit at the table.
Okay.
That's the first thing. Let us sit at the table because without us sitting at the table, we're not being thought about. It's like the same saying, out of sight, out of mind, right?
Talk to them.
So if we're not at the table or someone's not there to represent this population at the table, it's like a politician trying to create laws and legislation for a neighborhood he never and will never set foot inside of. It's just not going to work. Can't just be people from an intellectual standpoint making rules and judgments on a population without having the experience. That's what makes me the face of this movement. I have the experience, and I've, run several different businesses. I'm running several different businesses now. So I have the entrepreneurial experience as well as the experience of being incarcerated.
No doubt. Now, what is your message to people of color, the black and brown community, especially men who feel like there is no other way out other than selling drugs?
That's an interesting question. I could probably say 1,000 things. I think the most important is self-awareness. Again, it's going to be important to be self-aware of what your skill sets are and what your potential is. And, how did you end up in this situation? What is your experience? None of that stuff counts for nothing. You can't unlearn something. And then I would say read. Study these individuals, study these mega corporations, figure out how these dudes did what they did, how these women did what they did, and remodel yourself after that. We got caught up in living a music video life, and when it's all said and done, you can have music video money, if you grind this thing out. Sometimes you got to sacrifice. I know it's in us, right? Diamonds and all that stuff come from Africa, right? It's naturally ours, so it's in our DNA to want to have those things. It was stolen from us, but you can't get a $200,000 car and you don't own a house.
Message.
All right, Vincent, so what's something that you would like to share with our listeners that we haven't been able to cover?
Something that I would like to share? Honestly, man, for real, I love to read. The way I evolved was from reading, you know what I'm saying? And there's just so many different books that shaped my mind and sparked so many different ideas and
what was the first book?
I would say The Process of I, first off. It's called The Process of I, the letter I, written by Emily Morosian. That's the first one. And for all the business and tech people out there that's listening, I would say Thick Face, Black Heart.
What is it?
Show you how to separate your emotions from business.
What's that title again?
Thick Face, Black Heart. Just read. Study, learn, re-educate yourself. The education that we was taught in public school, that's not where it's at, man. It's not where it's at. They lied to us about a lot.
So let me ask you this, Vincent. What can people expect from you by 2020 and ConCreate?
Oh, man, so much. We're working on some initiatives for the census, right? The census is really important to black and brown people because, we do not know
Major key alert.
that the census is how they allocate monies to our cities, right? That's how they outline our districts for voting, right? Your votes do not count unless you are counted in that census. So that's going to be really huge because we're working on an initiative for felon voter initiative and the census. You can expect that by 2020. We're working on a program where employers will train people that are incarcerated to actually have a job, sign a contract where they have a job for 4 years the day they walk out of prison. So, you can expect that by 2020, which is a huge initiative because I believe that'll kill recidivism right away. We're talking, 600,000 people being released from prison every year.
Well, you're definitely an inspiration, fam. If people want to reach out to you, have questions, how do they get in touch with you, Vincent?
Several different ways. I mean, you can email me. Obviously, that's perfect. My email is vincentbragg@ConCreates.com. That's ConCreates.com. You can find me on Instagram at I am Vincent Bragg, Bragg. I am Vincent Bragg. And every other social media platform is the same. Before I get out of here, I want to shout out some people, if that's okay. I would like to shout out my man Dion Council at reflectionsapp.com. I think that's a huge, important shout out. Anya Lewis, the VP of Marketing. Janaea Griffin, the strategic strategist for ConCreates. I definitely want to shout out Anthony Kaylani, Smart Money Rick, some of my guys that's locked up behind bars still, Free Peso, Donnell Young, my man Grease, you know what I'm saying? It's just, I want to make sure we all know that we in this together, you know what I mean? I don't step out without representing for our people.